being here.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. One of the great things about becoming Secretary of the Air Force is that I've got somebody with me to serve from the National Guard who's a Red Sox fan. And until today, I didn't know that his first name wasn't Catfish. It is a real pleasure to be here today with all of you. This is actually the first time that I've been to Louisville, and I kind of wish I was here on Saturday to see the Heisman Trophy winner. Of course, Lamar Jackson is probably not here today, but it is wonderful to be here with some of the Heisman Trophy winners for America's defense. So thank all of you. I particularly wanted to thank all of you who have been surging to the fight over the last several weeks to help citizens in harm's way when they need it most, when things go wrong that they couldn't have predicted on their worst day. So thank you to the Guard for being there for the people of Texas, and thank you to so many who today are packing your bags and getting ready for Irma's landfall in the state of Florida. We appreciate you and everything you do for our families and our communities. When I entered the Air Force, the Air National Guard was a strategic reserve. It was the Guard that we relied on when things went really bad. And for the Air Guard, they were there. In the surge for Korea, when the United States went to war in Korea in the 50s, 80% of the Guard units, the Air Guard units, went to fight. It was a total force effort. But after the end of Vietnam, the Guard became not an institution that the Air Force relied on every day. But for the last 26 years, that has changed. And it is now no longer a strategic reserve. The Guard is part of the fight. Right now, there are more than 45,000 Guardsmen engaged worldwide in everything from fighting fires in Oregon, Montana, and California to the 19,000 Texas Guardsmen and Guardsmen from other states who are responding to Hurricane Harvey. We have nearly 13,000 Guardsmen who are supporting the combatant commands overseas today. And of course, as Irma bears down on Florida, they are getting ready to go and are already providing support in the Virgin Islands, in Puerto Rico, and of course across Florida. These citizen airmen bring experience and skills to the Air Force and to all of our services. I remember as a young captain, I was stationed at RAF Mildenhall at Headquarters 3rd Air Force in the UK, and we had, the weekly staff meeting where everybody briefed the general, who at that time was a guy named Tom McInerney. And we were going to be sending some units to one of the competitions that the Air Force has for gunnery. And so they announced that we were going to this particular fly-off. It was back in Nellis, and I remember General McInerney saying, well, how many Guard units are going to be there? And the briefer up the front of the room said, well, sir, there will be 2 Guard units at this competition. And Tom McInerney, the commander of 3rd Air Force, said, then we're going for 3rd place. And he was serious. The Air Guard units were and continue to be some of our most experienced and accomplished combat aviators. But it is not just in the air that we rely on our Guardsmen. The Chief of Staff, Dave Goldfein, and I recently, just 2 weeks ago, came back from 10 days, actually 9 days, being overseas in the Middle East. I know it's 9 because the last time General Goldfein went to the Middle East, he went to 10 countries in 10 days, and he told the team, look, that was just way too much. We can't do 10 countries in 10 days. So we did 9 countries in 9 days. But the cyber warrior that I talked to at the Combined Air Operations Center in Qatar was a guardsman. It is not just in the air, it's in cyberspace, it's in space, it is throughout the military, in every specialty that we depend upon the Guard. Earlier this week, I was at Whiteman Air Force Base. Anybody here from Missouri? Anybody else here from Missouri? I can never get this right. But I went to Whiteman. I've never been to Whiteman before, and so I was out looking at the nuclear mission at Whiteman Air Force Base. But the thing that I learned, and I learned a lot about the B-2 and the nuclear mission particularly that we do at Whiteman, but we have A-10s there as well. And the thing that was fascinating to me about Whiteman, I have never been to an air base that has as integrated an approach as Whiteman has. They have the Air Guard commander in the same headquarters at the other side of the hall from the active duty commander at Whiteman Air Force Base. It is a completely integrated associate unit. And when I was out with the B-2 maintainers, I always like it when a commander feels confident enough to let his 2 and 3 stripers brief the Secretary of the Air Force on what their job is and what they need and how they do their job. I was talking to the maintainers on the B-2, a very difficult aircraft to maintain. And each one of them was kind of passing me on to the next person in line. And there was a young radar technician there who left college because they figured out it really wasn't his thing entirely and it was really expensive. And so he joined the Guard. And he loves his job. And his job is to make the B-2 invisible to radar. And he showed me exactly how he did it and the tools of his trade. He couldn't be more proud of what he does there for the United States of America. And he is a fully integrated member of the Total Force team. We need to make that the standard at every one of America's air bases. And I just came this morning from Minot Air Force Base. Anybody? Where's North Dakota? All right. I was at Minot Air Force Base this morning, and they have a squadron there of defenders. Now, it's our only base where we have both the 2 elements of our nuclear deterrent, the two pieces of our triad that the Air Force is responsible for at the same base, both B-52s and the Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missile. Our defenders there, our security police, are responsible for the protection of that air base and its associated units. But to put this in context, the missile field at Minot Air Force Base, North Dakota, is the size of New Jersey. Nobody here from New Jersey? No. It's the size of New Jersey. I guess there is nobody here from New Jersey. New Jersey's at the bar. Well, it is. And these airmen are out there 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, protecting this missile field. And they have an associated unit of National Guard. It's another integrated unit right connected to the mission, and it's very good to see. I want to talk just briefly about the highest priorities for the United States Air Force and for the total force that I represent. When I came back to the service, back to being the Secretary of the Air Force, I had been inflicting calculus on 18-year-olds for 4 years as a college president, and I had been away from the national security business a bit. And I was surprised initially at the readiness levels for the United States Air Force. 50% of our squadrons are not fully ready for all of the missions that they are responsible for. 50%. And the reason is not because their commanders aren't doing everything they can with what they have, but because we are asking too much of those who serve. The Air Force is too small for all of the missions that the country is asking us to perform. And that showed really this morning up at Minot. One of the units from Minot is forward deployed at the moment. I actually saw them in Qatar, and they are the B-52 unit, they are very proud of the fact when we were there that they had had 572 straight launches without being down once for maintenance. And when we were standing there on the flight line, one of the B-52s took off, and one of the crew chiefs was standing there. He looked over at the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, and he said, 553. They're doing a fantastic job taking the fight to ISIS. And in their time there, they have recorded over 700 danger-close employments of precision weapons against the ISIS target. Danger close from a B-52 because of precision weapons. But when they come back to America within the next few weeks, they have 10 days to get ready for a nuclear surety inspection. 10 days. They have not practiced that mission for 4 months, and they will have a nuclear surety inspection 10 days after they get home. That's why our readiness rates are not as high as they should be, because our force is too small for all of the missions that the nation is asking of us. So in addition to growing the size of the force, which this year's budget starts to do, we also have to cost-effectively modernize. I was also shocked at the amount of modernization that's going to be going on in the Air Force over the next 5 to 10 years. And it's not just fighters. It's tankers. It's bombers. It's space assets. It's the nuclear deterrent. Across the board, modernization, because we have not done enough modernization over the last 26 years of fighting. The average age of an Air Force aircraft today is 27 years old. Now, we've extended the life out of these things pretty well, but we have an aging fleet. And I have to say, one of the things that I really admire my predecessors for is that they're not just modernizing the active force and giving the old equipment to the Guard. This is modernizing the total force. Anybody here from the New Hampshire Air Guard? The KC-46s are coming your way. The new tanker will be going to the Guard. Now, there are 5 states that I know are currently kind of interested in what's going to happen to those 2 F-35 units. And I will tell you what I have told all of your governors and all of your congressional delegations, who I think have all called me. We will make the decision based on the best interests of the security of the country. And the next F-35s will go to 2 Guard units out of the 5 bases that we're evaluating. The third thing we're trying to do, in addition to modernizing and restoring readiness, is driving innovation. In the Air Force, we're a bunch of bicycle mechanics at heart. We're always trying to fix stuff and make stuff better and test stuff and figure it out. I was on the ramp in Kandahar, and the actually not Kandahar, in Bagram, the triple nickel was there, the F-16s, and there was a young man, a maintainer from Loudon, New Hampshire, and he had figured out that when he had to take that targeting pod off the belly of an F-16, it took him a long time. And he figured out a way that he could actually build a rack to put an extra targeting pod on and bring it out by an aircraft and come up with a cable and plug it into the side of the F-16, and then he could do his testing without being out on a hot flight line for quite so long. We asked him, "What did your commander say about this?" Now, I was fully expecting him to look at his shoes and say, "Well, you know, the regulations said I couldn't." But I did anyway. To the credit of his commanders, they told him to get after it, innovate, solve the problem, focus on the mission. We need more of that. And the Chief of Staff and I are determined to get rid of some of the prescriptive Air Force instructions that stifle innovation and prevent us from taking the fight to the enemy. The fourth thing we have to do is develop exceptional leaders to lead the world's most powerful teams. Shortly after I was confirmed, we were up on Capitol Hill for a Bleed Blue event, which I don't think existed when I was in the Congress, but I'm really glad they're doing it. They bring in a group of people, usually who've done something exceptional in the Air Force, and just let them tell their story. Well, on that evening, they brought in the Green Mountain Boys. Is Vermont here today? I had heard that. The Green Mountain Boys had stepped up and volunteered to take an extra tour of duty and forward deploy. And the commander of the Green Mountain Boys stood up and told the story to the members of Congress and a heck of a lot of generals who were standing there as well, about how he mobilized his people, how he got them together and got them all of what they needed and moved them forward, how they set things up faster than they should have. And the guy who was head of arming their ammunition had a set way that the tech order said it was supposed to be done. That obviously wasn't working fast enough, so he switched it around. He got things going back in. He was telling guys what to do. He had 3 radios going. They were gonna mobilize jets. They were gonna get in the fight. And the commander said he looked over and he thought, that guy's a maple syrup farmer. It's one of the beauties of the Guard. You may learn your leadership lessons in a small town in America, and you bring them to bear on the fight when it's needed most. And the Green Mountain Boys brought it that day. We need to develop more exceptional leaders like we see in the front with the Green Mountain Boys. And our fifth priority, which the Chief and I share, is to develop and strengthen our alliances, because we are stronger together than any of us are alone. One of the most successful things the Air Force has done, and it was started some time ago now, is the State Partnership Program. Our State Guards have the continuity that our active duty units do not have. And by connecting the State Guard with our sister services, which started out when the wall fell and Eastern Europe became free, and we need to partner with the militaries of newly independent countries to show them how the military operates in a republic. And the states have stepped up through the State Partnership Program to create those kinds of enduring partnerships, which have been tremendously effective with so many of our allies. I saw that just 2 weeks ago in Jordan. I was meeting with the Air Chief of Jordan. Jordan flies F-16s. And I don't know if any of you remember, but very early on in the fight against ISIS, a Jordanian F-16 pilot ejected over ISIS-held territory. He was captured by ISIS, brutally tortured, and burned alive. The Jordanians responded. King Abdullah of Jordan promised to pursue ISIS until his military, quote, ran out of fuel and bullets, unquote. Now, before being crowned king of Jordan, Abdullah was a major general. He was in charge of Jordanian special forces. He had attended the Royal Military Academy of Sandhurst, and he was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the British Army. He actually flew Cobra attack helicopters. And in the retaliation strike conducted by the entire Jordanian Air Force against ISIS, he actually co-piloted one of the planes. Jordan is deeply connected to the United States and committed to the fight against ISIS. But until I met with the air chief from Jordan, I didn't know that in that flight, when Jordan retaliated against ISIS for the brutal killing of one of their fighter pilots, with the King of Jordan as one of the co-pilots, it was led by a member of the Colorado Air National Guard. The Colorado Guard is the partner state for the Jordanian Air Force, and they couldn't be prouder of that connection. Finally, I wanted to thank not only all of you, but your families for their service and their support of you as members of the Guard. In New Mexico, the New Mexico Guard is deeply venerated and has been for several generations because it was the 200th Coastal Defense Artillery from New Mexico that protected Clark Field and Corregidor at the beginning of the Second World War. And they became the battling bastards of Bataan. Which is why New Mexico had more POWs per capita than any other state in the nation during World War II. There wasn't a church in New Mexico, a parish priest that didn't know someone who was interned by the Japanese because they were members of the National Guard. In Hurricane Katrina, it was the Guard that was called, and it was the families who supported them. The same is true today for Hurricane Harvey. I know this because while I stand here before you today as the Secretary of the Air Force, I'm also the wife of a Guardsman. Thank you all very much for your service and for your support.
Thank you very much. Do you have time for a couple of questions? Okay. All right. I think they're impressed. The Secretary has been gracious enough to take some time to take a couple of questions. So if we have individuals who would like to ask a question, if you'll please move to the microphones. And
hello, ma'am. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Sanchez from the great state of New Mexico. I'm an Air Guardsman, and my question is, currently the National Guard has the RC-26, which is a Guard-owned aircraft. It's pretty much the only one. We've flown close to 48,000 hours of combat time. We've flown over Harvey. We're pre-positioned and ready for Irma. We are currently flying with NIFC in the forest fires, everything that you've talked about. The problem is we are guard owned. We have no MAGCOM. And from everything we're being told, this is a problem in palming money for the future. How do we keep such an important asset, and more importantly, the capability of manned ISR in the Guard and keep it running and keep it functioning?
Thanks for the question. I missed the first part of what is the RPA that you have?
It's not an RPA. It's the RC-26. It's a manned ISR platform.
Got it. The RC-26. Thank you. Are you with the 150th? Are you a TACO?
I am. 150th SAL. Yes, ma'am.
I'm kind of partial to the TACOs. Of course, the TACOs lost the F-16 mission. When we look at where we put missions, there is an insatiable demand for intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. We know that. And we're always balancing things and trying to figure out what to do. I honestly think that the New Mexico Air Guard probably made a mistake several years back on not trying to be an affiliate unit, and we lost the F-16s. It's going to be very hard to try to get back a long-term flying mission in the Guard in New Mexico. I'm aware of it. I understand it, probably more than just about anybody in Washington at the moment, just because of my history with New Mexico and the New Mexico Air Guard. So I don't have a quick answer for you on what the future brings for the Guard. I have talked to some folks about it, particularly because of the increasing mission around Alamogordo. And if you're with the 150th, you're probably are you drilling out of Kirtland?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. There may be more of an opportunity for the New Mexico Guard, and I'm happy to talk to the Air Guard about this, of trying to affiliate with what's going on at Holloman, both for the remotely piloted aircraft training units, but also we've now temporarily, at least initially temporarily, we've got a long-term decision to make, put the F-16 training unit there. Of course, that used to be what the TACOs had. So we've got some units, some flying units in New Mexico, and working an affiliation may be a better avenue for the TACOs than trying to re-stand up an air mission there at Kirtland. I'm just being honest with you, and I'm being honest with you even though my heart is always with the TACOs.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Madam Secretary. Lieutenant Colonel Tim Hoyle from the state of Delaware. My question is a follow-on regarding modernization, regarding the budget. So we've been in this situation where Congress has trouble passing a budget. The President just promised or made a commitment to move $62 billion from the discretionary non-military budget to the military, but it seems like Congress has been in an impasse. So how do we, as an Air Force and as a National Guard, go forward when the money isn't there to continually modernize? You talked about how we have 27-year-old jets on the flight line. And so how do we work together in a shrinking or a constrained environment? In the past, the Air Guard and the Air Force were fighting for resources. So how do we work as a team instead of fighting for resources?
To me, it's a total force effort. The budget that we put forward for this year, or for the year that's going to start on the 1st of October, has a significant increase in resources for modernization, for increase the size of the force, for flying hours, and so forth. So we are turning the corner back to restore readiness and restore the lethality of the force. The most important thing that we can do is get the Congress to pass a budget. You know, we can manage for a few months with a continuing resolution. But if they decide that they want to go to a year-long continuing resolution at last year's levels, or even worse, go to sequester, which is still a law of the land, they will break this force. They will break this force. If we are going to keep surging to the fight, and protect the vital national interests of the country, we have to have the funding to fight. And that's what we need to ask them to do, is fund the budget. Now, we're also responsible for trying to get $1.10 of value out of every dollar that we spend, and trying to get things from the lab bench to the flight line faster. That's an obligation too. It's not to waste money, to put it where it matters most. And honestly, we seem to get pretty good value out of the Guard and the Reserve, which is why the budget we presented is not an active budget and then, oh, by the way, some Guard and Reserve stuff. It is an integrated, total force budget that we are committed to.
Thank you.
Maybe one more question, and then I'll let you all go have fun.
Good afternoon. My name is Amy Storm. I'm a proud Arizona National Guardsman. I do have a question for you. I work at NGB, and I am actually at your Air Force Review Board agency. I am the advisor, the Air National Guard advisor, and your chief of the personnel board. Going towards your third objective of trying to get the power and the authority out to the commanders, we've been working for about a year to get some authorities delegated to the director of the Air National Guard, having to do with mission, with mandatory separation date extensions and things like that. But we've been told that we need to wait until the mission directive is completed. And I was wondering if you have any word on when the mission directive will be put out.
There's a risk in saying this, but General Goldfein and I have been consistent. We know we have a lot of Air Force instructions that are out of date, that are inconsistent, that don't make any sense. They defy common sense. We're going to try. We've got 24 months. We put a 24-month process in place to clean those up and to put authority back the level of responsible commanders. But don't wait for us. Get after it. Now, just as I came off the wait for us, get after it. Now, just as I came off the aircraft here, General Iverson, who's my military aide, opened his laptop and he said, "Where is Poison here? Poison Iverson?" He showed me an email from the commander at Patrick Air Force Base requesting. This guy's facing a hurricane that's on the way. We've evacuated a lot of stuff from Patrick. We're getting ready to help the community in the state of Florida, and I get an email saying, "Request permission to be able to drive my car from base to home because the regulations don't allow use of an official vehicle to commute back and forth from home to station." This is in the middle of the face of a hurricane, and I've got a colonel asking me, because the reg says I'm the only one who has the authority to do that. I have two questions. One is, who is the lawyer who's wasting my time and his with that? And my instruction was not only to him, but to everybody else out there: get after the mission, act in accordance with our values, and don't ask me these questions. Get the job done. Now, I know that there's, I know there's a reason for that reg. There was somewhere back in time some reason for that reg. Somebody did something that got somebody upset, and they said, "How are you going to make sure this will never happen again?" Right? So they wrote a reg that said you can't drive your car from base to home unless you get the permission of the Secretary of the Air Force. You know, we can't write regulations for good judgment. So we're going to change the regs. I'm going to find the lawyer. But get after it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you all very much, and God bless.